Hi, it's Leanne. I'm back for some more Whispers of Wisdom, and today I have with me Michael Shapaniuk, who has endured a life of hardship. He has written a book, and it's called My Journey by Michael Shapaniuk. How you doing today, Michael?
Oh, not too bad.
Yeah, are you enjoying the snow?
Well, not really, no, not really, but it's here. We have to enjoy it.
Right. So, Michael, you have quite the story to tell. Do you want to just start telling me what you have written in your book and about your journey?
Well, my journey started in 1939 when, before that, we lived on a very small village in eastern Poland, very close to the Russian border.
Okay.
In September 1939, when the Second War broke out, the without any notice, any knowledge of it. One morning we woke up and we had found the Russians occupying that part of Poland. Apparently, Hitler and Stalin had some kind of agreement that they gonna take the Poland and divide it in half. So we got under the Russian part of the Poland. Everything went kind of berserk. The schools right away were changing. We had to learn Russian, the Russian language, and everything else. Uh, that went on for 2 years, and in 1941, the Russian and Germans got into war with each other. So the Germans pushed the Russians back, and we found ourselves occupied under German occupation. Things was very rough. The Hitler promised that part of Poland for the Ukraine, so we got into the ethnic cleansing, if you want to call it, where the Ukrainians, they want the Germans to get all the Polacks out of that part of the country. They were taking forced laborers, from that country. All the administration and, in that part was handled by the Ukrainians.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted that part of the country to be cleared of Polacks in very quick way. What the Germans were doing, they were taking the people from that part of the country to Germany. So the Ukrainians were assigning all the healthy, people into Germany, but that was too slow for them. So they got into the murdering of the Polish families.
Oh,
Uh,
I'm sorry about that.
we, for a time, we never slept in a home because they were killing the families, burning the houses. They were really burning people alive. So in 1943, the Germans told us that they can't give us any protection if we want to uh, get this kind of in the groups to protect ourselves. They will escort us to the city. We have to leave everything behind. So we did. We went to the city. My two sisters were living in a city that was 15 kilometers away from the village. We got there. We took the livestock. We had one cow, and my sister had one cow. So we took them to the city. We used to go outside. We were on the outskirts of the city,
Okay.
outside in the forest there and land for pasture. One day I took them out for pasture. I came back at noon, and there was a trucks waiting for me. Two Germans load us up on a truck. They took us to a city named Rovno, where was a gathering point for people to be shipped to Germany. So we got there. We were there for about a week till they got enough people for a transport. They loaded us into box cars like the cattle.
Oh, okay.
And away we went to Germany. At that time I was 11 years old. We came to Germany. I had no shoes, no nothing. Next morning, they took us to a place Halle, where, as far as you could see, there was all wires and all nationalities, Jews, you name it. They were sorted out, which were going to the factories, which were going to the farm, and one that weren't fit for work anywhere. So they were into the concentration camps or death camps, whatever you want to call them. We were picked, my mother, my brother, and sister were picked for farm work. So after about 3-4 days of traveling here and there, we ended up on a farm. Next day, in the morning, we had to go to work, and we were gathering canola, and I never forget that I was barefoot, and when they cut the canola, somehow they have to have the machine set high, so the stubs on the ground were very high and sharp, and I was barefoot. I was bleeding. My feet were bleeding because I was puncturing them in the skin, with the stubs. And the farmer was riding on a tractor and having a big laugh of it. But in a way, we settled there. We arrived there in June. We worked there for till fall. They had a system in the fall that the farmers had to give up so many workers into the factory for the winter season, and they get them back in the spring, but not necessarily the same people, they just.
Yes.
So my sister, she was a handicap, and myself as a kid, the farmer decided to give us up, myself and my sister. Well, my mother was kind of upset, because, the kids were going somewhere else.
Yeah.
They went to there was a Russian girl. She was there for a while. She could speak German very good. My mother, of course, couldn't. But she decided to go with my mother to the reef and plead to leave us, where we were. He was a very good guy, He says, you see what he can do. There was another farm, a small farm in the village.
Mm-hmm.
They had a one worker there. He was Polish, and he used to cause a lot of problems for them. They were old couple. So the reef went and sent him to the factory and took me and put me there, for his place. I had it pretty good there. They treat me as a kid, which I was. But that's only lasted till spring, and then I had to go back to the main farm. So and that lasted to 1945. In 45, the Americans were coming closer and closer to the area where we were. So one day I went out working with the horses in the morning, and, being a kid, not knowing nothing what's going on. I usually work till 7 o'clock, out in the field. But about 3 o'clock to 3 o'clock, I don't remember exactly what time it was. The farmer says to me, okay, Mike, you can hitch the horses and go home. I was shocked, surprised, that this time of the day he's telling me to quit. So if I was, older, I knew what was going on, I would do it different. But I decided to take the road back to the main farm, the usual way, which is the main highway. And I got out. I had to go about 1 kilometer to the village. I got out on the road. There was a few German trucks and soldiers walking the opposite way. But to me, I didn't know which way, whether they were running away or going into the front. By the time I hit the village, the tanks were gone. First, I had the funny vehicle coming towards me, It was a Jeep with American soldiers on it, and they were all black, and I never seen a black man in my life. But that went by, and I hit village, and the tank convoy was coming through, and I had to get to the farm. I had to turn left, cross the thing, and there was no way. They were just one after the other coming. I stood there and tried to control the horses. The horses were getting kind of spooky because there was noise from the tanks. Then all of a sudden, the one tank stops, and the head sticks out through the it me to turn. To turn. So I always had that for me to get home, even the horse stopped. When I got into the yard, I was told that the Americans are in, and this is over.
Oh.
So we were there. We're the Americans and the Russians decided that they were going to meet in Germany. That was on the river Elma, when we were about 15 kilometers away from it. So the first lines of the army stayed there, and there was kind of no law, period. Some of the foreigners, the Russians, especially there was one Russian, he was from the Cossacks, you know. He went to the farmer. His farmer was an old, I guess, cavalry man. So he had riding horses and swords and everything. So he got everything out and used to ride the village. And we had two bakeries, you know, in the village. So there was, before that, everything was on Russians, you know, bread and all.
Mm-hmm.
But that was all done. And then they were baking the bread, and everybody, foreigners and Germans, and that, get around, and they were getting it. And this guy, he took a horse and saddle and a sword, and he used to ride around the village and chase the Germans. And when the bakery opens, you know, he used to ride right into the crowd and waving the sword. So the Germans run away, and they had a hard time, you know. That went on for a little while. But before that, when the Americans come in, they, for some reason, in the middle of the village, the American army took our farmhouse as their headquarters or whatever, you know. So one day, my brother and I, you know, he was 2 years older than me, we were walking around there and talking Polish. And one of these American soldiers turned around, he says to us in Polish, he says, "Are you Polacks?" Yeah. He says, "Me too."
Oh.
So we had a chum in the army. They used to walk around with them. They put a helmet on me and a gun. And, you know, I was telling him the stories. We're sitting in the yard, and I was telling him, and there was I guess he was some officer. I was telling him how badly they were treated. And he was, and they were, of course, they were drinking. They were, so he was explaining him in English, you know, what I was saying. And the farmer's wife, she had to move from the house into the attic over the barn. She showed up in the yard, and this soldier yelled something to her. He says, this guy says to me in Polish to tell her to stand against the wall. He took a gun and gave it to me, and he said, "Shoot her." Well, I never had a gun in my hands, you know. I had no intention of shooting her. So we were kind of struggling with the gun to shoot her, and she escaped through the, you know, buildings into our quarter, and my mother hid her. When he noticed that she was gone, he grabbed the gun and he went looking for her. I guess if he would have found her, he would have killed her.
Wow.
But then my brother, he was working on a boat close to 10 kilometers away. He came, he took my mother, myself, and my sister, my brother, because my sister, I don't know, as far as we know, she went to the Magdeburg city, and we never heard from her. She couldn't read and write. She couldn't speak German. We thought she was, you know, gone. But the three of us, we went with my brother to where he was working. And for some reason, and I met him a couple of times after he in the States. I asked him why he put us back to work, you know, in the farm. And my brother and I, we ended up working with oxes, you know, and They were the worst thing that you could handle, you know. So we stayed there for about a week. One day, and the Russians were coming closer and closer to the Elba, you know. We got home, and there was American trucks waiting for us. They took us, loaded us back into the box cars, and nobody knew where we were going. Some people were saying they're going to ship us back to Poland, all kind of, but nobody knew nothing. So evening, the locomotive hooked up, a couple, 2, 3 hours in a ride with the train. We're on the sideline there unloading those foreign grain, open army trucks, you know. We got on those trucks and we were taken to the, was kind of, you know, I don't know what was there. It was a barracks and it was just loaded with cockroaches, you know.
Oh,
And we uh, survived somehow till morning. Next morning, everybody was kind of trying to get some pots and boil water and get rid of those cockroaches as fast as we could. We were there for about a month. The American trucks came in. This was actually already under British section. So the British section the trucks come in, they load us up and they move us into another place. There was a big camp there, you know, a big, well, I guess armories, if you want to call it, with barracks. Half of it was occupied by Jewish families, and they put us in the other half. Then start organizing the schools and you know, get kind of life together. We stayed there. Then the Jewish families moved out. They put them somewhere else, and we took over the whole camp. So we started there, you know, and I went to school, you know, starting like, you know, from 1939 to 1945. We never went to school. So they kind of start us all with grade one, and every so often they put us to tests and they move us up grades, you know, as we could get there. We were there for till 1947. 1947, we moved to another place. While I was already approached to grade 7, there was a group, a small camp. There was no grade 7 school. So I had to go about 20 kilometers to another place to school. I just got there, you know, we started for about a month. Well, I had to go back because the camp was moving somewhere else. So we moved somewhere else. We got into this place and the same thing happened again. They had not enough teachers there. There was a big camp. There was not enough teachers to, you know, give a teacher to each class. So we were kind of left on our own in grade 7. And we had a high school in that school, that camp. So then the principal of the school came and he told us that they have no teachers for grade 7. So he wanted us to go to the high school and write the tests. If we pass, we go to high school. If not, we just back down to grade 6. So I passed that and we went to that. We stayed there for, in the meantime, they moved that camp, all the families out of it, but the high school stayed. So my mother and by that time, we found one of our sisters
Nice.
So uh, my she was already married then, in the other camp. My mother, my sister and her husband, they were moved to another camp. I stayed behind in the school. We stayed there for a while, and then they decided they're going to move the school into another place. So we traveled again. And, it was very hard, to be in the food was short, and the administration, I guess, from 1945 to 1948, there was nothing that you could buy in Germany in the stores. Everything that you could get, if you could get it, it was on the black market.
Okay.
So there was a shortage in the food, and a lot of stuff in the high school. I believe that I can prove it, but I believe that a lot of the stuff that was assigned to us went to the black market. So I quit the high school and I went to the camp where my mother was. That was in 47. In 48, there was a group of there's certain jobs that was assigned strictly for the displaced persons camps. That's what we were in. And I got a job there, volunteer job work. I started working there and I worked there for a while. And then my brother got to Canada, to Algoma Steel here, on a
Mm-hmm.
contract. At that time, there was a lot of work in Canada, but there was no housing, so he could have brought us in, but he had to have a place for us to live. Well, he came to Canada in 1947, and he got married in 1948, no, 49. And my sister-in-law's mother, they had a little house. She signed that she will give us the living quarter, and then my brother brought myself and my mother to Canada.
That's beautiful.
And it was kind of I was with my mother, but in the same token, my mother couldn't speak German. I had to kind of look after her.
Mm-hmm.
We came to Canada, it's the same thing, but we spoke Ukrainian, and my uh, sister-in-law's mother, they were uh, Belarus, so I spoke that language, and my mother did too. So that was easier. Then it came to get a job.
Mm-hmm.
My sister-in-law got a job for me with a contractor who were extending, building the Navy home. I lost it there for one day and he let me go, because I couldn't speak English. And, at that time I thought he was no good man for doing it. But looking on the back, I was useless to him because I couldn't speak the language. He couldn't, he lead me by the hand, and show me what to do. So I lost that job. There was a lumber yard. He's still here on Third Line. It was to Coloradus Lumber. It was a German. The owner of it was German, and all the upper management in that thing was German. So I went there just 19. I came to Canada in 49. Just before Christmas in 49, I went there looking for a job. And I found out that this engineer that was more of a hiring person was German. And I spoke German pretty good, yes, well, fluently, I would say at that time. So I got a taxi there from Bayview. I says, you take me out there and you find me this guy. So he did, he was Ukrainian, the taxi owner. He did. I walk up to him and I start talking to him in German, And, well, he says, we're not hiring right now, but maybe after Christmas. And then in the conversation, he says to me, he says, what nationality are you? Without thinking, I said, German. If you're enough close to start working right now, I said, yeah, that's okay, come on with me. He took me to a guy there, he was a supervisor. He spoke to him something in English. Then he says to me, this is your supervisor, and you're going to work for him. So I got a job as a German. We were there for about a month or so. The owner came, he was from the States. So we were working, and this Bill Krasnowski, that guy that I told him I was German, is calling me over. I walk over, he introduced me to him. This is Herodis, and this is our German Mike, shake a hand with me. Where are you from in Germany? Well, I knew Germany pretty well, so I told him a few places. And I ended up, the next day, I ended up in machine shop as a handyman. At that time, it was Algoma Steel was paying $4 an hour. I ended up getting $1.25 an hour. Big. Then I worked my way to the filing room, where they're filing the saws, the band saws, big saws for the lumber. Mm-hmm. We worked there with another guy. He was a supposedly good friend of mine. He was Ukrainian. And this supervisor of the filing room was from the States. He was retiring. Now, one of us would have to get his job. Well, you don't have to think much who's going to get it. The German Mike or the other guy, his name was Mike also. Mm. So, in the meantime, I cut my finger a little bit. But it was a very important finger and lining up the teeth on the. So I worked in steady nights, and I asked him for give me some help because, well, the next day I come to work. I was told to report in day shift as a laborer. So I figure, just because my finger and that, and I get back to the other job. This foreman, the labor foreman, he was a Finlander. At that time I already could speak English enough to. He says to me, "Oh, wait till the Rodis comes." I said, "What?" Oh, he says, "Mike told him." What Mike told him? He said, "Mike told him that you weren't German, you were Polish." So I should finish that shift, and I got home, and I said, "I'm not gonna let him fire me. I'm gonna quit." So another guy came from the Sudbury. He was a relative to. Oh, I missed that. My mother got married,
Okay.
Remarried in Canada, and he was a good friend of my stepfather. Then he said Sudbury's hiring in the mine, so I quit Rodis. I went to Sudbury, and I got a job in the mine. I worked there for about a year, not quite a year, and I figured that mining is not for me, underground. So without thinking, I should have think, I quit there and I went to Montreal. Oh. Back again, to looking for a job. Finally, I got a job at 70 cents an hour. My paycheck for 45-hour work was $28 after that.
Imagine that.
I stayed there for a while, and then wait, I got lost.
You're in Montreal.
I was in Montreal, yeah. From Montreal, first I got the job they wanted to workers for the Seven Islands. That's in Quebec. That's in Gaspé there. They were building a roadway, a railroad from Seven Island to the Gaspé Day to the mine. I got that job, I signed up for that, I went to the bush there, stayed there for about a month or so, and I didn't like that either. So I went back to Montreal. Then I got that job that is 70 cents an hour. And after that, we got laid off from there. I got a private chauffeur job. I had no driver's license, no nothing. I went to a Jewish family. I had Ontario operator license at that time. It was a different operators and driver and the chauffeurs. I had operator license from Ontario, but that's no good for anything. I went to an interview for that job, and I got the job. Good luck for me was that the lady I was driving, she couldn't drive, so she couldn't find any mistakes in my driving, and so I went to get chauffeur license from Quebec.
Mm-hmm.
I went to the license bureau for the application. They can't give you a chauffeur license. You're not 21. You have to have a co-signer. Well, where am I gonna find a co-signer in Montreal? I don't know anybody. So I tore up the application. I went to streetcar. Went to another one. Fill out the application. Age 21. Okay, so now I'm going for a test. This little French guy comes in with a half-ton truck. We got in. We drove for about quarter of a block. He says to me, and he's hard French language. He says, you can't drive? I said, yeah, I know I can drive, but I gotta eat, you know. And you could bribe anybody in Montreal those days, for the $5 on a seat. By the time we finished that roads, that $5 disappeared. I figured a good chance for license. We stopped at the thing. He says to me, he says, he says, with his French accent, I never forget. He says, he says, I give you a license, but remember, he says, if you kill yourself, you on the road, not mine. And he gave me a license. So I worked on that private chauffeur job for a while. Then I met my wife. She, they needed, she was working in a textile factory, industry, very, very poor wages. They needed a nanny, that family, so I got her job there as a nanny. We worked there for about a year, and then the family had moving to Florida. So we lost that one. In the meantime, I called my brother in the Sioux, and I says, how long still? He says, they hiring. So I came back to the Sioux, and I brought her over after from Montreal, and we got married in 52. And I was not quite 2 years in Lagoma still. In 52, they big layoff. I got laid off again. My wife now, she had a sister in Montreal. They had a little shop they were building, iron furniture, kitchen tables, chairs. She says if we come to Montreal, he'll gonna give me a job in the shop. Well, that was her dream. He had no plans of giving me a job. So I went there, and now I have no place to live, hardly any money, and no job. So I ended up getting licensed to start driving taxi in Montreal, which was very hard, not speaking in French. And my brother called me in 1955. He called me and he says, Algoma Steel is calling you back. So I packed up stuff and I came back to the Sioux, and here I am now today.
Here you are today.
There about today.
How old are you now, Michael?
Only 94, 93, be 94 this year.
So you have a 94-year history with a lot that's happened to you.
Yeah, I went through it all.
You're a resilient man.
If I may add to it, that if you listen to that story, you think it's a fairy tale, but it's not. This is what wars can do to people, and it never ends.
Well, you're touching me, and I'm really sorry for what you had to go through. But I really think people need to hear what our older generation has gone through in order to understand what they have now in their life.
Yeah, I every time I see the people suffer from the war, it brings back the memory, and other people don't believe it. But to tell the truth, sometimes I have a hard time to believe I could go all through that and still be alive.
And you're still here to tell it.
Yeah.
And I thank you. I thank you for what you've done. Have you published your book?
No, I just made enough copies for my kids, grandchildren, and that. I never published it.
It's a great story, Michael. It's a great story. I hope I can get this story out here to people around the world so that they understand the steps you took to get yourself to Canada through all the hardships you've gone through. You're an amazing man, Michael, a very amazing man, and
Thank you.
we owe you so much gratitude for what you've been through.
Yeah, and if you look at it the way it's going today, it seems like we're getting ready for another disaster that I lived through one, and I hope that nobody has to live through it.
No. But you're telling your story, you're getting it out there. I have so much respect for you and your family, and I might want to add that you are still here with your wife.
Yeah.
And you've been married how many years?
72.
72 years. And she's here. She lives in this building with you, so
Yeah.
which is wonderful. And you have family here now.
Yeah,
So I'm going to say to anybody that's watching this that Michael's had his hardships. He told you stories of him not having shoes on his feet, and his feet have walked many miles to get himself here. He's endured a lot of hardships. And I don't know, I can't honestly say what you got through, but you're here. And I'm thankful. I'm thankful that you could do this for me.
Well, I thank you for having me here, you know. And,
People need to understand. People need to understand just what's gone on. And you told, I'm not going to say it's a beautiful story. You told me a hard story, but your ending is good.
that's only the highlights of what I really went through, you know,
Yeah.
because I'm doing it from the memory, and it's what 85 years of remembering things, and
85 years of resilience,
yeah,
94 years of resilience, really. You've been through a lot. But I'm thanking you for being here. And I'm going to ask everybody to please comment, like, and share, because Michael's story is just a very heartfelt, warming story of his journey. Thank you, Michael.
you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Can I give you a hug?
Sure.
Thank you so much for everything you've done. Thank you.
Yeah.